Hello. In this devotional, I'm going to share with you three thoughts from 2 Kings chapter 17, verses 7 through 13, where we will ask the question, why did Israel fall? Second Kings chapter 17, verses 7 through 13 says, "And this occurred because the people of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the customs of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel, and in the customs that the kings of Israel had practiced. And the people of Israel did secretly against the Lord their God things that were not right. They built for themselves high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. They set up for themselves pillars and asheroms on every high hill and under every green tree. And there they made offerings on all the high places, as the nations did, whom the Lord carried away before them. And they did wicked things, provoking the Lord to anger. And they served idols, of which the Lord had said to them, 'You shall not do this.' Yet the Lord warned Israel and Judah by every prophet and every seer, saying, 'Turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes in accordance with all the law that I commanded your fathers, and that I sent to you by my servants, the prophets.'" How is it that the people of God, the descendants of Abraham, this special people that God had placed in the promised land, how is it that they go through generations of struggle before ultimately being conquered by the Assyrians? How does Israel fall when the Lord had protected them, had kept them safe, had given them the land, had freed them from Egypt? How did it come to this, that they ultimately were taken away into captivity? By looking at 2 Kings 17, 7 through 13, I'll share with you three thoughts on how Israel fell. Thought number one, they neglected the Lord. While the people of Israel should have been faithfully serving the Lord, who had shown them through his law the way to live, who had made them a special people set apart from the nations, they should have been faithfully serving him. They should have consistently kept his law and been faithful to him. But they neglected the Lord. Even though he had given them so much, for some reason they didn't appreciate it. They didn't appreciate all of the blessing that he had provided. All this provision, all this care that he had for them. They weren't concerned with it. And they neglected the proper service and worship of the Lord. Thought number two, they worshiped false gods. As if it weren't enough for them to neglect the appropriate worship of the Lord, they substituted that worship with the worship of false gods, the gods of the Canaanites who were in the land before them. They followed Baal. They set up the Asherah and worshiped her. They even had some who worshiped Molech. And worshiping these false gods was a great affront to the Lord who had brought them up out of the land of Egypt. Thought number three, they ignored the prophets. It isn't as if the Lord was negligent in keeping the people of Israel faithful to him. It isn't as if he didn't give them the law and tell them exactly what he expected of them. He did all that. And on top of that, he even sent his prophets to Israel so that when they did worship these other gods, or they were neglecting his service, the prophets would come and proclaim the word of the Lord, give the people warning, and let them know that they need to turn. They need to turn back to God. But the people, they ignored the prophets. They didn't want to hear what these men spoke from the Lord. And because of that, Israel falls. These three thoughts come to you from the assigned reading, 2 Kings chapters 16 through 20. If you'd like to read through the Bible with me, you can do so by joining the Facebook group Through the Bible, where we are reading the text of Scripture together.